All right. Let's get this out of the way first. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed on Tailboard Talks Firefighter Podcast are solely those of the speakers, guests, and host, and do not in any way represent the thoughts or views or opinions of any other employer, partnership, or sponsor. The material and information in this podcast is for general information purposes only and should be used at the listener's discretion. It's never as good the second time as the first time.
Yeah.
So we're recording, so now we can continue talking. We got the hockey talk out of the way. It's all good. We have to bore people with how bad Edmonton is going to lose this year.
Let's go Oilers. Okay.
Just bitter Blackhawks fan, just spitting venom over here. Well, welcome. So officially welcome. We've been talking for about 20 minutes already about hockey and our kids and everything. So welcome to the show. Very happy to have you. Why don't you just quickly introduce yourself, a little bit of background. We'll jump right into it. We have a few things I wrote down as topics that we already talked about, and we'll get going.
Sounds awesome. My name is Raina. I'm a registered dietitian. I live up just outside of Edmonton, Alberta, up in Canada, and I am married to an RCMP officer up here. So my company is called Shift Work Nutrition, and I dove into that after being in private practice as a dietitian for about 10 years. And I really transitioned over there because I just saw this big gap in the nutrition field when it came to this crazy lifestyle of rotating shifts. So because we did it in our house, because my husband worked all kinds of days and nights and 4 on, 4 off and all sorts of different kinds of schedules, I was looking into some of the research surrounding it, and it was terrifying. Like, all doom and gloom, all like cancer and heart disease and diabetes and depression and anxiety and all of these really negative things. And I panicked. Like, we're all screwed. We're all screwed. We're all going to have high blood pressure and all the things, and we're going to die right after we retire, because it was just so negative. And so, but I didn't see anything to kind of compensate as far as how do we really realistically pull in some of these nutrition strategies to minimize these risks. So we know nutrition plays such a huge role in all of these lifestyle things. And so that's where I dove into. And so here I am now. So that's what all my content is really surrounded to, is just making nutrition stuff as like practical and realistic and easy in real life, and McDonald's drive-thrus and all the things, energy drinks. So just because I know that this stuff happens, and we're not trying to slap anybody's hand or judge anybody for doing that, but just saying this is a reality, and how do we make it as good as we can?
Yeah, I really appreciate your approach too, because like we were talking about before, when we go to work, we pretend like we're in control. Like, we pretend that we're in control of like whatever's happening, but we have literally zero control.
Right.
Doesn't matter what we're doing, what time it is, what we'd rather be doing, what we're involved in, we can be called out. And then, as much as we, again, like to pretend we're in control, we're really public service out there. So it's like, yes, I would like to do things a certain way, but I got to do it this way because the public is asking for this or demands this or whatever. So having one more person tell us what we can and can't do is like, you could be giving me the keys to the castle, and I just don't want them, because I don't want to sit through a lecture about how bad peanut butter is for me. Like, just let me eat the peanut butter and do my thing and be happy for a minute, would you? And so that's what I really appreciate your approach, because it's like that. It's like, peanut butter is not going to be the thing that takes you down.
Yes.
Let's just do a few more things this way if you get around to it, and you'll be more well-rounded. But I would be more apt to disregard whatever you said, regardless of the value of it, depending on your approach, than be like, oh, it's my problem, I'm interpreting it wrong. No, it's just not realistic. So how hard was the struggle then, from going from private sector to then trying to teach and get your husband on board with this stuff? Because I almost would consider that, knowing myself and what Katie tries to make me do, that would be harder than getting our 5-year-old on board with things sometimes.
Oh, I refuse to be my husband's dietitian. Like, that is the number one bad thing for our relationship. Like, we will go to counseling if I step into that role. So he does ask me stuff often, especially if he's in a season, as we all get. Like, we've got seasons of high motivation, and then we've got seasons of lower motivation. And so if he's in a season of like, hey, I'm focused on this, I'm like thinking about meal prep, like, he will send me over Instagram. We're sitting in the same room, but he
Oh
sends
yeah.
me Instagram reels of like, look at this meal prep idea. I'm like, that's great. Go for it. To really take it by the reins and run. So yeah, so I try hard not to be his dietitian, but I also want to support him, right? And so
Yeah.
sometimes, like I'll pick the supplements that we get. I'm picking the protein powders. I'm picking the things because I know what I want and I'm picky.
Yeah.
And so it's things like that where I'll bring that in. And for example, the other day we went and did a workout together. It was on Mother's Day. He said, we were sitting in church and he leans over to me. He's like, when we get home, we're doing this workout. I'm like, okay. So we went home and did a Mother's Day workout together. Um, but then when we were done, I said, here, take this protein shake, the BCAAs in it will help with how sore we feel after. And
Yeah.
then I was talking to him last night. He said, yeah, actually, I feel better than I did last time. So anyways, that's how I view my role as like support, but for sure, I am not trying to change him. He probably gets more nutrition advice from his buddy at work than he does from me. So
Oh, well, that's a slippery slope. That's got to be.
yes.
So how do you sit on your hands then when you're like, oh my God, please, when he comes home with a new carton of Jack 3DX and he's like, I think this is going to be awesome for my blood pressure. I heard it makes your face turn red, which means blood's moving. So let's go. Like how do you sit on your hands eating, Slim Jims have protein in them. So if he's going to grab a couple of those, what are we doing? Like, how do you navigate that field?
So sometimes I say, would you like my professional opinion on that? And then if he says no, I'm like, okay, well, let me know how it goes.
That's a
And
trap.
yeah, that is a trap. I know. You're right. It's like, does this make me look fat? Kind of one of those type of trick questions. So yes, it's if I have a genuine concern,
Yeah.
I might say like, hey, this is something that I recently read. Like, it doesn't look like that may actually work. So go ahead and try it if you want. Let me know what you think. But
Yeah.
so it is. It's a fine line. So I think again, as they always say in therapy stuff or whatever, I focus on what I can control, right? So I do the majority of the cooking in the home,
Yeah.
majority of like having just the healthy, easy stuff, eat like fast and easy. And this is my whole mantra, I think, in my approach to nutrition. We're ultimately lazy people. If you're working rotating shifts, you are tired. And so the mental capacity to like think about meal prep or think about what to buy at the grocery store or think about like meal planning, it's low.
Yeah.
It's really low when we're just always fatigued. So I, I view my job as like making the healthy stuff as easy and accessible in our house as we can. So pre-portion things, fast, easy veggies, whatever it is.
Hmm.
And then that just helps set him up for success for picking easy stuff out of the fridge and pantry. Or if I am packing his lunch that day, then it's easy for me. And so,
So there was a recent one I saw you posted where it was like he had texted you and said, "Hey, I'll be home in 5 minutes.
yeah,
Can you make my lunch?" And
yeah,
what I really liked about it, it didn't turn into like, "Oh, in the 5 minutes before my husband came home and I made this artisanal sandwich with my own home baked sourdough." And you're like, "Here's some turkey and here's some cheese and here's some lettuce. Put it in a
yes.
box and sent them out the door. Like, see you later." I'm like, "That's pretty refreshing." Like we're not carving ham on the side of the house that you've been smoking for 3 weeks. You're like,
I
"Yeah,
wish. I
here's some
wish.
turkey and get out of here, man. You got to go."
100%, 100%. So, yeah, lunch meat is such a hot topic, and sometimes I feel a little bit guilty about that because I know the like data around lunch meat.
Sure.
However, this is real life, and sometimes I'm buying a rotisserie chicken or I've made my own roast beef and then I cut that up for sandwiches. Yes, sometimes I do that, and sometimes there's not a lot of time, and on occasion those things come into and that I literally he called me and I literally put up the tripod, put my phone in, and I'm like, all right, I'm getting content out of this for social media because this happens all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh, absolutely. And leave it in the morning. Yeah, my wife will make smoothies for her. She'll make
yep,
eggs and toast for the kids, and
yep,
I'll just grab the bar we bought at Costco and just grab it and be like, "This is good
yep,
enough."
yep,
It's just kind of the way it goes. And maybe I'll eat
right.
something at work, and maybe I won't till lunch. But these things happen. Um, so when you go out to departments or organization or groups, what's the general feeling? Is it more like, "Hey, we just want to support people"? Is it, "Hey, we're checking a box and we just need someone to talk"? Or is it like, "We are clueless. We have no idea which way is up and we may be adults, but we act like 5-year-olds. So please help us"? Where are you finding, what's the median feeling when you go out there and talk to different groups of people?
That's an interesting question. So I would say I'm primarily brought in by people who are maybe in charge of training or in charge. They're like, a lot of times it's a new role. I have people come in like, hey, I'm new in this role. I'm in like a wellness coordinator position, or I'm
Mm.
I'm a health and safety officer or whatever. And so I think for that side of it, there's a bit of checking the box aspect of it. Hey, we're looking for new information for training. Ah, we've never
Yeah.
talked about nutrition before. Great, come on in. And so we
Yeah.
do that. So whether or not the audience participants are wanting it, because I do think there is a concern. It's like, great, you're going to come in and tell me not to eat McDonald's and eat less fast food and drink less caffeine. I already know that.
Right.
But what other option do I have at 3 in the morning when I haven't had time to meal prep? So,
Right.
uh, so I think I'm hoping that when I come in and a lot of my presentation work and corporate stuff, whether it's virtual or in person or whatever, is saying like when you do go to McDonald's, here's what I would recommend getting, because
Sure.
I appreciate that that's a reality of it. So I'm really focusing on here's how to have better energy. Here's how to feel less sluggish over your shift. Here's how to deal with when you get a really tough call and you come back and there's a box of donuts sitting in the back kitchen. And your brain will drive you to eat that really fast, energy dense food that will release endorphins.
Mm.
Here's how to handle some of this stuff. So I think for sure I'm checking off maybe a training box, but I've definitely had comments of people saying like, man, I wish I knew this 30 years ago because nobody was talking about how to eat for night shift.
Right.
So, and there's a plethora of research out there, but again, I don't see this being really well discussed on a detailed level. All the nutrition recommendations I see for shift work are painfully generic. Stay
Oh yeah.
hydrated, eat
Right.
well,
Right.
take care of your stress, sleep well. It's like
Mm-hmm. Nailed it.
brutally generic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me make it clear. I'm not against checking the box training. I very
Sure.
much believe it comes down to who's presenting it and then
Mm-hmm.
who's receiving it.
Mm-hmm.
I've certainly been told to go to training, and depending on how cranky I was that day, it was the best or the worst training I've ever been to,
Interesting.
independent of what
Yeah.
the people around me thought. Right.
Right.
So if that gets me in the door and that gets me in front of people, then it's in my, it's my job then to make it beyond check the box training.
Sure.
So don't take that as an insulting or a degrading term at all. But um, do you see more feedback from older employees or younger employees? Because I would almost think that the older employees towards the end of their career would come back to you and say like, yeah, I wish I did know that. It explains why I
Mm-hmm.
bolted on 30 pounds in the past 10 years. Where
Mm-hmm.
the younger guys are
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I'll care about that when I'm 50 and none of it matters anyway. So I'm just gonna eat the donut.
Uh, Sometimes both. So I've seen feedback from, I would say, an older generation of, oh, nutrition, that's women's work in the kitchen. So I've had that. I was doing a presentation to a group of police officers, and the one guy like said, "Hey," because I was talking about what to pack in a lunch and just like some really generic ideas. And the one guy said like, "Hey, can you call my wife and tell her what to do?" I'm like,
Yeah,
absolutely not.
for
That
sure. Yeah.
is, I'm not going to be responsible for that therapy session. So I've seen that perspective. It's like, yeah, nutrition is women's work in the kitchen, and I don't really care.
Hmm.
And then I've seen the other side of it where, like, man, yeah, if I had this 30 years ago, I would probably be in a much different spot than, yeah. And whether you would be or whether you wouldn't be, I think just having some of the guidelines of knowing what to do is helpful.
Yeah.
And then on the younger side, like some guys in the police force who have been in a year or two, like they still feel good. The night shifts haven't really caught up with them.
Yeah.
They're happy slamming 4 monsters a night, like they're good. And so it's not it's sometimes it's not until we feel it. It's not until we feel like, okay, this is starting to get old. I'm
Yeah.
starting to feel the effects of this. That we're looking for what else can I do to help my energy level.
Yeah. It's something my brother used to say. He got his counseling degree, and there's been a big push in the fire service for peer support and counseling and kind of this internal thing where we take
Mm-hmm.
care of each other with
Mm-hmm.
just initiating the difficult conversations and then quickly referring out to a appropriate level. But he would do these talks and we'd talk to all the new guys about it. And my brother would say, this is basically like giving a toddler the keys to a spaceship. Like it's this incredibly valuable
Mm,
thing that they have no concept how to use yet. And it's basically
right.
useless. They might as well just chew on it for the next 10 years until they grow up. But someday, if they keep that key, maybe they can put it to work, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what we see a lot of times with, unless someone comes in dire shape and they're like,
Right.
I need to lose 50 pounds because I am just getting rocked out here.
Yeah.
Most of it's like, I mean, I've had the same talk with one guy now 3 times where at the very beginning on the first 5 days, we'll sit him down and be like, okay, here's a little overview of nutrition. Here's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
suggestion on protein intake. And here's, blah, blah, blah. And at the 6 month mark, we'll come back and test them again. They'll be like, how much protein should I be eating? I'll be like, okay, so you remember like 6 months ago, it's a long time. You've done a lot. Let's go over it again. And then at the
Yeah.
1 year mark, they're like, hey, when I get a probation, can we sit down? You can tell me like about protein and stuff. I'm like, God, you are killing me, man. I know I have it documented. We've talked about this twice before, so it's
Yes.
just not a thing until it's
Yep.
a thing, like you're
Yep.
saying. So it's,
100%.
but that's, again, it comes back to your approach and why I appreciate what you're putting out there. Cause it's very much just little drips, and
Yeah.
we talk about with the fitness stuff at work is like, the best thing we can do is be available for 20 years. And then hopefully after 20 years, someone takes us up on it. And that's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
major win, but we're not going to force anybody to do jumping jacks. We just got to let them know when you want to do jumping jacks, I can help you with those. And then
Yeah.
take them as they come, right? Another thing you did, caught my eye big time, was something that's prolific in my department. Was there's a little green powder mix that everybody seemed to pick up about the same time because of their formidable marketing presence, and that's athletic greens.
Right.
And then everybody was riding the wave of athletic greens, and
Right.
I was like, okay, I can kind of see what's going on here. And
Mm-hmm.
we thought about it with the morning smoothie thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then I started seeing some very, very few people were turning a critical eye to it. And then I saw you kind of profiled it a little bit and said,
Mm-hmm.
it's got all this good stuff, but what about this stuff? And
Right.
then we've kind of sent back and forth a few other pages that have kind of dissected it as well.
Yeah.
That kind of attack the same but different aspects of it, where it's like, oh, and there's also these other things to think
Mm-hmm.
about. So we're not out to vilify athletic greens, but
Yeah.
I think it speaks to a larger lesson of like, there's no magic bullets. This might
Yeah.
help, but
Yeah.
there's some consequences to everything, right?
Yeah.
So if you just want to kind of go in on that a little bit, whatever is kicking you right now about athletic greens or just the supplements in general.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you said I love the word used, the formidable marketing campaign. We are all looking again, I think as humans, and I don't have a psychology background, but I think as humans, we're kind of built for like the path of least resistance with the most amount of instant gratification.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, yeah, if I could drink these greens instead of eat veggies, it's great because I don't really like veggies that much. So this athletic greens came out hot on the market, lots of big influencers, big well-known names, and good-looking people pushing it. So all the ads that I saw were like,
Yeah.
were my demographic. So it's women, maybe like early mid 30s, whatever. And they're like, yeah, my bloating's gone, and this and this and this, and it's kind of like, oh, that actually looks like it's this dark green color, looks super healthy. Anyways,
Yeah.
Every time there's nothing new under the sun, right? So every once in a while, something else will come out, whether it's ginkgo biloba or athletic greens or whatever it is. It's like, this is the answer to all of our issues, and it's easy. And so athletic greens, in a nutshell, is like a multivitamin. It's probiotics, and it's herbal supplements like ashwagandha. Everything has ashwagandha in it. So, and other kind of herbal things. So it's this big conglomerate of a drink, but it's very concentrated and very powerful. So for sure, there could be great components from the probiotics. Ashwagandha is an interesting herbal supplement because it's got pretty good evidence for some things and weak evidence for other things, but it's promoted for like everything. But at least here in Canada, like the supplement industry is so very unregulated. And so anybody could slap something together and call it whatever and sell it, go ahead. So Canada has very strict rules on some things, and then other things are super loose. So in that sense, it could be a little bit risky for people who are on medications. I'm leery of taking things like that because all that stuff could actually impact your medications. My Instagram post came about because I'd just gotten off a call with a client of mine who's a medical resident, and she's saying, "Man, people are like coming to hospital and livers are like their liver enzymes are off the charts. They're showing signs of early stages of liver damage and liver like disease and whatever." And we're like, what is happening with these people who seem fit, who seem healthy in all these other regards, but they're coming in sick? And the scariest one was a child who came in. And again, all these liver things happening, and mom is feeding their child athletic greens. And so
Wow.
that's what she said, is that these people are coming in, taking athletic greens, and their liver enzymes are off the chart. And the thing that drives me crazy about athletic greens is that more is not more. So athletic greens has 1,000% of your vitamin E intake. Vitamin E is one of our fat soluble vitamins. We're not just going to flush that out through our pee. And
Yeah.
so if you're taking that on a daily basis, and vitamin E can be achievable through regular food, as most of our nutrients can, that's concerning. That's concerning that we're getting 1,000% of a vitamin we just don't flush out easily. And so, especially when it comes to certain demographics, red flags are going up for me.
And but because of your background and your ability, you dug into, like the nitty gritty of the ingredients and papers of it, right?
A little bit. It was a big rabbit hole that
Yeah.
opening that can of worms. So I've done a little bit, and I think there's not many papers on athletic greens specifically. So I shouldn't
Right.
I don't, like I said, I don't want to vilify just that one supplement. It's just been the biggest, shiniest one right now. There are lots
sure.
of papers though on green supplements in general, and a lot of the liver components that come with it come down to some of those herbal components, or if it has a green tea extract in it. That can seem to be one of the things that gives us a boost of energy naturally, and I'm doing air quotes here, naturally. And it still has a natural form of caffeine to it. So that can give an energy boosting effect. But again, in concentrations or in unregulated supplements, that green tea component or some of those herbal things they can put in, those are the components that can be more damaging to our liver.
Okay. Tricky. So let's say that I just bought a 2-pound jug of athletic greens, right? And it was like $180,
Yes.
and I can't return it, and I got duped. What's my next steps to safely navigate this minefield?
Oh man. Yeah. So even if it was me, I'd be taking a look at the nutrition value and be like, okay, I don't know if I want 1,000% of my vitamin E intake every day. I'm maybe gonna half dose this, or I'm gonna do it once a week.
Sure.
And it'll take you much longer to get through, obviously, at that rate versus doing it every day. But your body could more so handle that dose of something at spread apart more at a smaller frequency than every day.
And these are all, like you're saying, these are all detectable things too. So if you take the measured approach to it, and you are, unlike me, you're a normal adult who takes care of themselves through regular checkups and dentist visits, there's a better chance that at 6 months when you go in and get some blood work done, they'll be like, oh, you're still good. And the next 6 months,
Right.
like, oh, you're creeping up.
Right.
And you can
Exactly.
then kind of monitor it that way, right?
Yeah.
There's been another one. Do you want to slam athletic greens anymore?
No, we're done. We can bear that one. That's okay.
There's another hot one out there that I just think it almost got me too, because I was like, this sounds way over my head in terms of smartness, and I don't know, so maybe I'll just stop doing it. But oatmeal has been dragged through the mud.
Right.
And I like oatmeal. Like, I've never had any problem with it. And I would usually add peanut butter into it or protein powder.
Right.
I consider it basically a medium with some fiber. It's basically like the noodle of breakfast, where you don't eat spaghetti for the noodles, you eat it for the sauce and the meatballs, but you need a vessel to get that stuff to you.
Right.
That's what oatmeal is to me, right? But now you're seeing these things like oatmeal is going to rob your phytic acid and strip your brain down, and you're going to be hungrier and all your nutrients are gone, and all this stuff about oatmeal. And I was like, seems believable because this person's presenting it, and there's a word I don't understand in there, but also there's no way it's that damaging. So help me out with oatmeal for a second.
there is always going to be a little bit of truth to everything. So this like all that stuff's from oatmeal. This is not just a concoction of lies and fibs. And so some of that mechanism in our body probably does happen. Does it happen to the extent that we say for everybody? No, we can never blanket approach like that. Everybody's body and physiology is going to be a little bit different. So I know lots of people who oats actually don't sit well with at all, just from a gut
Mm.
health perspective, that type of fiber, that type of carbohydrate, or even the level of oats you get. There's like steel cut oats, there's rolled oats, there's quick oats, so
Yeah.
sometimes oats are just a hard fiber to digest for some people, and they really don't feel good eating them. Okay, no problem. Um, that doesn't mean that everybody that oats are the worst and that they're destroying your gut and that you're stripping your nutrient intake or whatever. Not necessarily. And so
Right.
I would say I'm on the side with you in terms of um, I've learned enough about food. I've done enough research to realize that everything one day will kill us, and I'm basically just gonna eat what I want and feel as good as I can as I go along. So, and I definitely remember that feeling in university, going through all of these like, really high level courses and being like, that's it, we're all screwed. We're all screwed. Everything
Yeah.
is everything
Nothing's
is
safe.
nothing safe. So
Yeah.
from that perspective, my goal is again to make this as realistic and practical as possible. So not there's always some people who, yes, when we pull out oats, you might actually feel better. Digestion might feel a little bit better. You feel less bloating, you feel less gross. But if that's not the case, then why are we creating more restriction around very normal foods that
Mm.
actually do also have some health benefits to us? So oats are really rich and they're famous for their soluble fiber aspect of it. So, very famous for helping improve bowel movements for a lot of people, for lowering cholesterol levels. And that's a whole nother can of worms, whether we want to open up the cholesterol debate or not. But so there is always these proven health benefits. And if, like you said, if oatmeal is a vessel to kind of get some other nutrients in, I love adding chia seeds and hemp hearts, and I add some protein powder in there. Then I might add some nuts or some dried fruit or frozen fruit or whatever. So for me, I can take that thing and I can turn it into this really nutrient rich thing that keeps me feeling full and satisfied.
Mm.
So pulling out oatmeal just because of this potential nutrient interaction thing, and now I'm going to go have like a Pop Tart instead. That's not a win in my books. So,
That's the thing is you can't just have a void. Like
right,
you're going to fill it with something, right? And
right,
so, yeah, what's the next best thing? It's probably not anything of any quote unquote higher value or higher nutritional content than the stuff you picked first.
right, right,
You're less likely, I'm not going to put the oats away and make a salad.
right.
Like,
No, I'm
like I'm
not.
really
I'm
going to
not
go
doing
off the
that
deep
either.
end here.
Yeah,
I'm going to have cereal, which is just oats. That's what I'm
right.
going to do. Um, Surprise one that I just thought of while you were talking. Um, I like so I'm doing endurance events now,
Mm-hmm.
along with just regular workout stuff, and there's several different brands of the electrolyte powder
Yep,
mix, the
yep.
liquid IV or the drip drop, or there's a fire specific one.
Mm,
Um, I believe those have a place too,
yep.
but I see those almost guys are using those like as a water substitute almost.
Right.
And I'd like you to speak on that for just a hot second about like when do you really need that? Is it really that necessary? Am I
Mm-hmm.
really sweating out that much salt that I need to drink a salty drink to
Right.
recover so I can just watch TV for the rest of the day? Like what's the, in a perfect world, where would those be used strategically?
Right. So I actually think in the world of firefighting, and that's not necessarily our worlds, but from what I've read, based on just um, the thermal stress that your body goes through when you're wearing the full gear. And I had the opportunity to go to the fire hall, and I did a night shift with him last summer, and the guy let me put on all of his gear, and I was immediately like sweating, and we were just standing there, and I did one
Yeah.
flight of stairs and like ready to pass out. So to me, if you have a very high sweat output, like if you're somebody who does any type of workout and you're just drenched in sweat, electrolytes are probably going to be beneficial for you because you've got a higher fluid loss than maybe somebody else just naturally in your genetic makeup. So I
Mm.
do think there's a time and a place for that, depending on the climate, humidity, all of that. There are a few signs that may actually be indicators that your body may benefit from having electrolytes versus just drinking water. So if you're experiencing like any sort of muscle cramping after workout, as you probably know this, salty cravings, especially for some of my clients after a night shift, they get a lot of salty cravings, or they're laying in bed and just feeling like their muscles are restless, that sort of thing. Likely what happens is that over their night shifts, especially depending where they're working, maybe they're a nurse on a busy unit, something like that, they don't actually get a lot of opportunities to be drinking water. And so coming home and just having a drink of water doesn't cure those or deal with those symptoms of salty cravings or muscles, whatever. So we've been having electrolytes for them. So they haven't necessarily been doing a high sweat workout, or they haven't been running long distance, but that is a scenario where they actually really do benefit from it, especially when they're going to sleep. So that's a bit more anecdotal. I don't have a ton of like clinical evidence behind that one. In the athletic realm, and I don't proclaim to be a performance dietitian by any means. Mostly I will be using electrolytes for somebody probably after, again, depending on sweat output, but maybe not till after 30 to 60 minutes of activity. And then I would say, okay, now move from water now into electrolytes. That might be more appropriate. Some electrolytes have carbohydrates, some don't. And so again, if it's an endurance activity, now I probably want you to do electrolytes and carbohydrates after a certain period of time. And then we go into the carb schedule, or the carb kind of loading component of it. But
so that naturally leads into is that better than like a typical Gatorade / Powerade thing or a Diet Coke or a regular Coke? I mean, because in the grand scheme of endurance sports or just stuff, electrolytes, Gatorade, Powerade, and Coke are all on the same playing field.
Right.
Surprisingly. Right. And chicken broth for like ultra marathoners and stuff. There's all these obscure things that all fit in the same level there. Is there a component where you're like, okay, electrolytes for this one, full strength Gatorade for this one?
Right.
You just go sit down and have a Coke, and you're drinking chicken broth over there because you just ran 500 miles.
Right.
Like, how do we responsibly judge what's appropriate for us? Because I'm going to go towards probably the best tasting and probably the sweetest and most calorie dense thing because that's the best. So I'd rather eat ice cream than make a sandwich.
Right.
How do we responsibly govern that in our head of what is appropriate for us?
Oh, and I think you've hit the nail on the head. There's definitely a science to this, but there's also what sits well with your body. Some people, like I've seen posts, people like, oh, I tried this new gel and then I puked on my run. Like so that's not a good one for you. Don't keep forcing that one down probably, even though maybe scientifically it's the best. So there has to be that element of like what sits well with you, what your gut can handle, what feels good, what you like, what you don't like. So that might be the base level one of kind of us choosing it. I don't think that we need carbohydrates. Really, we should have enough stored in our muscles in the form of glycogen to fuel probably 60 to 90 minutes of a workout. And then from there, in the case of endurance sports, it's like you're going, like even if it was a half marathon or a full marathon, or you're now doing a 50-mile, whatever. Now we need regular carbohydrates because we've tapped our storage. So if we recover adequately after workout and we're putting the proper things in post-exercise recovery, we should be topping up our glycogen stores after workout. So your next training session is good. You've got lots in the tank. Again, if it's long, now you actually do. Then I would switch from maybe just an electrolyte because it's a hot day, you're sweating heavy, and then you're going longer. Now we need the full strength Gatorade where we need those carbohydrates and maybe the electrolyte component coming in.
Are we just seeing a trickle down from the advancements in like food tech basically that are just accessible to everyone now? Like I feel like this is almost stuff that would be reserved for like a professional cycling team or professional ultra marathoners, but now it's just at the gas station. Like there's a gel now for biking that's 100 grams of carbs in one gel pack. Wow. It's pretty big. Yeah. It's the size of a Twinkie, but it's a monster amount of carbs in there. And you would be, if you were part of a professional cycling team or an endurance team, you'd be ramped up to that. You know, like here's a 25-gram packet and you have 4 of those and you're like, okay, I can handle 100 now. And you ramp up that. But now it's like I can go on the feed and order a box of those things for $20 and I can have 100 grams of carbs
Yes.
right now if I wanted to.
Yes. Yeah.
So is that just a symptom of us, is just food science trickling down to the regular person? And now we just think that everything's for us.
I think so. I think that's a really good point, is that everything is so accessible. Like I can go on Amazon and get like, I don't know, whatever I want and right to my
Yeah.
door. Whereas before I'm like, no, I actually have to drive to the grocery store to get that thing because that's not available. So I think you're right. I
Yeah.
think there's so much more accessible, and we live in a DIY world, I think. I'm going to go
Mm.
online, I'm going to Google a training plan for me because I want to do a triathlon. All right, I don't need a
Yeah.
trainer. I can go do that myself, which we all know is Google is the most devious, dark, deep
Yeah.
hole that you could go down and get
You
very
can do
confused. You
that.
can.
Yeah, you can.
It's not
You can do a
advisable
lot of things.
because nobody's there to answer my questions when my knee starts
Right.
hurting, then my ham starts hurting, and then all the things. So
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think everything is so much more accessible. What the point that you made there that I think was subtle, but it's so true, is that amount of carbohydrates in a gel pack could wreck your gut. Like if I'm
Yeah.
doing a performance nutrition plan for somebody, um, we are very strategic about how we are spacing things out. Like I'm like, you need to do this, and then we're going to talk again in 2 weeks to see your tolerance level for this. And then we're going to increase the carbohydrates again if it's tolerable. And then we're gonna stage it out. So just to go
Yeah.
and grab that thing, like, oh yeah, I'm going on a family bike ride. I'm going to go get this 100 grams of carbohydrate gel so that I'll feel better. That's not how
Yeah.
that works. So it's
Yeah. You'll be feeling things. Yeah, you'll feel all
you'll be
sorts of
feeling all
things.
sorts of things. Very true.
You're not going to want to stop for ice cream halfway.
Yeah.
So on here before, thanks for just running off the radar with those. That was not planned, but that was a good conversation. On here before, so I'm only licensed, I'm only certified to the level of personal trainer. So in Illinois, I can offer generalized nutritional advice, but I can't give you a detailed food
Sure.
plan. Like I
Yep.
can't tell you to eat eggs at 8 o'clock and
Yep.
3 eggs and then
Yep.
this much pepper or anything like that. But I can say, hey, you should aim for 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight.
Sure.
That's USA math
Sure.
right there. Reading miles per hour and pounds per body weight. But the three things that I've generally said are safe, and I've gotten backing from some smart people, are protein, creatine, and fish oil,
Yeah.
or some sort of omega-3.
Yeah.
Do you have any strong feelings on those three, or is there anything else that you're like, oh, and don't forget about this thing that I frequently see shift workers low in, or they can just add it as pretty easy,
Yeah.
low potential for harm, maybe a potential for benefit, but we're not going to need to like change your heart medication to try this
Totally.
out.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. I like all of those a lot. I think protein powder is not always 100% necessary. Some people just really don't like it, and we can do it through food. It's just takes a little bit more time, a little bit more planning. So I love protein powder for its convenience and how nutrient rich it can be. The whey is very quickly digestible after. So all that stuff, I love that. Creatine, the creatine monohydrate seems to be, we don't need to do any of the fancier versions now. That seems to be the standby old faithful. And even, so benefits obviously from a workout perspective, but even there, I was reading some benefits to it from a shift work perspective too, is that it can help with the circadian rhythm disruptions by some mechanism. I'm not 100% sure how, but, or it can help in the prevention of early sarcopenia that occurs in shift work. And sarcopenia just means that our loss of muscle mass over time as we age. Shift work seems to speed that process up a little bit, which is depressing, but creatine might be able to help with that. And then, like you said, the omega-3s, I think that's excellent because, so you said fish oil. I do like to differentiate a little bit because people can be like, oh yeah, fish oil, and go out and get it. Fish oil can have a whole different blend of those different fatty acids. Right. And some of them have a really high concentration of maybe things like vitamin A. And so I'm very, very just careful about how much people are getting from that. But if we target exactly like you said, the omega-3s, or the omega-6 and 9 are more easily obtainable through food. We will experience a little bit less inflammation in the body if we bump up the omega-3s. And then the 6 and 9, we don't supplement as much. We just get that through diet. So I usually target the omega-3s specifically for a little bit less inflammation, heart health, And the only other one I add in for pretty much all my shift workers is vitamin D, especially us just living up here in the north in Canada. We just do not get the opportunity to make vitamin D from the sun for half the year. And then if you're working
Yeah.
shifts and you're sleeping half the days, it's hard. So I pump my clients up on vitamin D quite a bit.
Do you think the gloomy atmosphere up there is more from the cloud cover or more that you're forced to deal with Edmonton as a hockey team?
Oh, boo. Uh,
I had to bring it full circle. I had to bring
yeah,
it
yeah,
back
yeah, yeah.
around.
Uh, we actually get a lot of sunny winters. It's just the angle of the
Okay.
sun because we're so far north and it's freezing cold.
Yeah.
So we're rarely exposed, have our skin exposed outside anyways. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
we actually have quite pleasant prairie sunny winter days. Um,
However you need to defend Connor McDavid, I understand.
I
I
know,
get
poor
it.
Connor, stuck up here.
I get it. Um, I think this is great. I think this is a great conversation, and I love the realistic and um, applicable approach. Is anything else bugging you? Is anything else on your radar right now that we should look out for or care about, or the low hanging fruit stuff? Because you see it differently than I see it, than the next person sees it. So is anything really itching you right now that you want to get out there?
Oh man,
And it's okay if there's not.
yeah,
It's okay.
yeah.
This is just one of those
Well,
things.
there's usually so many things, but I think I'll say this as maybe as a wrap up. I struggle with what I call the all or nothing mentality when it comes to,
Mm,
say, my fitness and my workouts. Like, man, I ran a half marathon last year. That should be my minimum of what I achieve for my exercise. When it's like, that's
yeah.
actually not very realistic for my life right now to go out for an 18K training run. And that all or nothing mentality, I see that a lot in the world of nutrition. I'm not going to jump into a nutrition plan until I've got the time and the energy to do it, and my baby's a little bit older, or my job settles down a little bit, and I've got time to meal prep. Um, if we are perfectionist about nutrition, number one, it won't be sustainable when you do have the time and space to do it, and or we'll never get around to it. And so I think usually exactly like people tell me in the fitness thing, it's not just about making the time for an 18K run. It's about you actually got to start consistently and putting it in. So
Mm.
be careful with that all or nothing mindset. I'm not going to do it until I can do it all and do it really perfectly. It actually is so much more successful. And this is an annoying recommendation, I know, to do the small things consistently over time.
That's one of the unfortunately indisputable ones of that generalized packet that we
I
talked
know,
about
I
before.
know.
It's like it is, but it's just the way it
Yeah,
goes. And there's more and more science to back it. They're now recommending, in an example of like the half marathon or marathon. Now they're legitimately saying like, no, 1 hour runs a week is better than 1 5 hour run a
yeah,
week. Like now we're learning that is actually more beneficial. It's not taking the easy way out, and it's not shortchanging yourself. You actually gain the capacity that you're looking for by doing shorter, more purposeful
mm-hmm,
segments instead of
mm-hmm,
thinking like, oh, I'm gonna run 12 eventually. I got to run 6 today,
right,
so I know what half of it's like.
right,
You can. That's all being dispelled, which is really nice
yes,
for busy people because
yeah,
now I can trust that my 2 hour rides are going to be my long ones. My 3 hour rides are going to be like, I might get 2 of them in before this big event in August,
mm-hmm,
but I can know that the science is behind me, that I put in the work, that I can ride 7 hours in August because I've done the right
right,
things that the smart people tell me.
right.
So it's so annoying. It's so annoying. It's such a pain because if nothing else, it takes away one more excuse of like, well, I can't do 5 hours. I might as well do
Yep,
nothing.
exactly,
But you can do
exactly.
1 hour and you can eat a little bit better. You can not eat the ice cream that I ate at 9:30 last night watching Colorado get beat. It's just all these things that you can do these short little steps,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Raina, thank you. Tell everybody how they can get in contact with you. I'll put all your stuff in the show notes, but the easiest way to get in contact with you.
Sure, probably just on my Instagram. My handle is Shift Work Dietitian. Pretty easy to find. My website is shiftworknutrition.com. So hopefully also fairly easy to find. Yeah, I'm super happy just to chat
And you
with.
offer stuff on there. You offer different levels of stuff on there too,
I
right?
do, yeah. I'm pretty tightly regulated as far as the demographic and where people live and who I can see as far as
Mm.
our professional bodies and colleges. But they definitely have some stuff for anybody who can access. It's kind of a bit more in the DIY side of it. So
But it's coming from a good place. It's not we're talking high-end
Oh
DIY
yeah.
lumber here. We're
Oh
not,
yeah.
yeah,
These are all of my recommendations about like what to eat, when to eat, caffeine strategies, sleep strategies, and
yeah,
and and all the stuff that I see that impacts people's energy the most. It's just not me sitting down one-on-one with somebody, but it is
right on.
all of like the research-based content. So
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank
my
you.
pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Absolutely. We'll have you back on once next year, maybe next year's playoff run when next year's the year, and then we'll have you back on to see how everybody's
Hey, we're
feeling
not
up
down and
there.
out yet. There's hope.
I know, but you'll have to be watching. Connor will be like playing for San Jose or somebody. You'll
That's true.
have to get a
That's true.
Sharks hat.
Yeah.